Angelo John Lewis for the Sacred Inclusion Network. And if you'd like to know more about us, please visit our website, sacredinclusion.com. And I'm here today. It's an enormous privilege to welcome my guest, Ali Khan, who is the founder of something called Braver Earth, or Brave Earth, also known in Spanish, Tierra Valiente. And we're going to get into his background in a bit, but what I'll say for now is that he left a successful career in finance to start this visionary experiment, which we're going to go into. Welcome, Ollie.
Thanks, Angelo.
I never know whether I should call you, your name is so majestic. I don't know whether I should just call you Ali Khan or Ali, but I'm gonna take the liberty of calling you Ali.
Actually, I prefer Ali Khan if I get a choice in it.
Ali Khan. Okay.
Yeah, Khan means king, actually.
Yes.
And yeah, so I could talk a bit about the journey, but as I was going on to my spiritual journey, I used to be okay with people calling me Ali, and then I had a download at some point that my name is Ali Khan, and to step into that full name as part
Yeah,
of
that makes
my
sense.
yeah,
That makes sense. So
yeah,
without going into your total life story, it's not a small step to be involved in Wall Street and doing finance stuff. So I don't know if you're in Wall Street or not, but in any event, doing all that, and all of a sudden, now you're in the middle of a rainforest in Costa Rica. So what was going on that made you want to do this transition that
yeah.
you're living in now?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I was actually in Bay Street, which is the Wall Street equivalent in Canada, and I started off in investment banking, mid-market, mergers, acquisitions, and then I uh, did an MBA and I finished something called the CFA, and then I went into asset management at like a we have, we have like six big banks in Canada at a big bank running mutual funds. Um, and I don't know. I think, being a product of immigrants, I was first generation Canadian. My parents immigrated from East Africa, um, mostly due to colonialism in Africa, and it got weird in the 70s. My dad left Uganda, and my mom was in Tanzania. And if you go a few generations back, we left India mostly because of colonization. So, few generational shifts because of colonization and the British. And here I am in British occupied Canada. We still have the Queen on our bill. And, I was told to go down a set of, I don't know, like checkpoints almost, like live the Canadian dream, be a doctor, lawyer, banker, make a lot of money, get a house, get a wife, most in the same religion I'm in, and then be happy. It's like that would have been my parents' ideal version of the Canadian dream in some way. I did most of it, although growing up in Canada, I was drinking a lot. Um, Being in investment banking, asset management, MBA, like we would drink a lot as part of the Canadian culture. And, it got to a point where actually I turned 30, had a big breakup, was quite depressed, probably drinking two, three times a week. And um, yeah, my brother suggested we go to Burning Man, which I didn't really know what it was. And looking back, it's like I followed the algorithm of what success would be like, making good money, had a condo, house, whatever. Um, but I wasn't. It was, really devoid of culture, I would say, the Canadian dream, the Western dream, and devoid of a lot of connection in many ways. Um, uh, Dependent on substance like alcohol. And then so Burning Man journey put me on something of like, wow, these people look and feel real and seem free. And then we started working in some plant medicine. I had an alcoholic brother, which I ended up taking to Peru. I thought I was taking him because I was pretty, wasn't too far behind him. He was probably farther along the journey than I was, but as a high functioning alcoholic, I would say, I was binge drinking two times a week probably. Um, um, yeah, I had a lot of realizations in that first, it's a long time, Vipassana, essentially. It's a 2 week um, meditation with multiple ceremonies. And um, yeah, one of the realizations was that I'm not free. And if I was free, what would I do? Would I be doing what I'm doing? And uh, the answer from my soul was no, you know. And I had all sorts of messages come through. One of them is like, I'm going to leave what I'm doing. I'm going to go to India. I'm going to learn about yoga and tantra and um, reclaim some of my Indian heritage. Um, yeah, and just realizing like how I actually moved through life out of fear versus out of love. And sounds a little banal, but once you're in these medicine things and it's coming at you in all these ways, it was really, uh, yeah, it was life changing. Actually, changed my life. Um,
You
yeah,
know, you could go on, but I'm going to interrupt you a little bit because that's my prerogative. I know a lot of like middle class and upper class Indians, and there's a tremendous ethos of becoming Western successful, I'll call it.
yeah,
And so, I mean, I can appreciate a little bit of what you're talking about just from that perspective.
yeah,
And the idea of reclaiming your roots on any kind of level, it's almost, it's no small journey.
yeah, yeah. I think Indians are some of the most grand folk out there. You know, being the British, being there since the early 1900s, colonizing them, understanding what wealth is, and who the overlords are, and there's a lot of Stockholm syndrome from my perspective. It's like, and like when you look at it from like a rural perspective, like you know, um, or like yeah, India used to be. I forgot what the number was, but I remember hearing it was like 25% of the world's GDP, and then the U.S. came, or sorry, Britain came, and really just sucked out a lot of their resources, and they were just a few percent of the world's GDP after the 1900s. And so it's like we actually went from wealth to less wealth, but you know the the capitalist overlords had a lot of technology, and I think had a lot of perceived power. And even my tribe, that I think the strategy for the British was divide and conquer. So they would get the Muslims against the Hindus and war. And so that's part of the reason our tribe left in the early 1900s to East Africa. And even in that, why did they go to East Africa? Because the British were there. And the British were stealing resources from East Africa at the time and creating railways and stuff. And the Indian class became the second class. So it was the whites, the British, and then the Indians, and then the black, native, indigenous. And so, with Idi Amin in the 70s, he kicked out not only the British and the whites, he kicked out the Indian class as well,
Yeah.
because they were really linked to the colonization project as the middlemen. And history doesn't paint a good picture. I don't know exactly what happened with Idi Amin and all of that. There's some, lots of stuff to dig deep into there. But I could appreciate that sentiment as well. It's like there is something interesting about that. Um, and I think that same sentiment, was brought to Canada where we're this tribe called the Smileys, and we worked really hard. And our Pope figure, which is the Aga Khan, I'm not part of that religion anymore, but he would say, do really well in school, go to university, like promote Western values,
Yeah.
so that we were a lot of Smileys were upper class, upper middle class, and like as I zoom back and as I got into plant medicine, kind of rewilded, I was like, oh, and there's so little culture underneath it all, right? Once you take away the clean streets and the, you know, Medicare for all in Canada, the socialized, there's just like there's alcoholism, there's angst, and there's a hole in spiritual depth, you know. And even as a young one growing up there, like I had multicultural friends, which was amazing, like white friends, Chinese friends, Indian friends, but we were all racist towards the indigenous people, and I had no clue why.
Mm.
Really, I didn't understand why, but we all were. And now as I grow up and did some reflection, you're like, oh yeah, that's part of the Canadian values, right? Like we, there's this sentiment that Indigenous people have a free ride and all these things, but really, you know, it's full of shit. It's part of the ethos of the colonizer that
Yeah.
um, has alienated that class whose land it actually is, right? We're all colonizers, that are coming to Turtle Island and, saying it's ours. Um,
Yeah.
so, it's a lot of, yeah, unlearning
Yeah.
that take place, you know.
So let's talk about what you founded. Um, you're one of the founders of something called Braver Angels, Spanish Tierra Valiente. Could you describe it for
Braver.
someone that knows nothing about it?
Yeah, sure. It's called Brave Earth. I think you said Brave Angels,
What
but
did I
Brave.
say? Did I say I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Braver.
Um, I mean, yeah, we were looking to do something a little different. Like, the backdrop, we started this 10 years ago, and um, just continuing where I was in the journey, I left my job, started backpacking around, learning, going to India, learning Tantra, learning yoga, working with plant medicine. And I was also started to organize events in Toronto around a lot of those things. And it just happened really easily for me. And so uh, there was a discussion with my brother, who was an activist, and his partner at the time around, yeah, creating something different, like a center like for transformational events. We call it a Center for Applied Cultural Transition now. And also around creating a farm, especially if my brother was an activist and working with farmer peasant movements, and a lot of his conclusions were if climate change is real, then if we're not growing our own food, we're really susceptible to uh, supply chain disruptions down the line. And pre-COVID, this was kind of radical, right? Like people weren't thinking that far out, and then post, a lot of people are like, oh, I see what you were doing. So we, it's intrepid farm or permaculture-based farm. And then also like this idea to have community and live in community. And so those were like the three pillars. And yeah, we uh, you know, yeah, we're looking at where to be, and Costa Rica didn't have an army, and we had a friend who had a center here, so we asked them where we should be, and they said, "Why not the farm next door? It's for sale." And um, yeah, like our neighbors were doing something called biodynamic farming for about 20 years. They were 30 years now, but at the time it was um, pretty. They were established, and coming here, seeing their farm was like, wow, we know nothing about farming, and so
Wow.
it was a good. We learned a lot from our neighbors, and we still appreciate our neighbors. Um, and yeah, just like really appreciative for them because we were able to sync with them in the first few years. And so what we've created is we've basically finished the Center for Applied Cultural Transition, like that's the event space. We have events around Eros, Polis, and Gnosis. So Eros being connection with um, the earth, also with one another. Polis being understanding what's happening in the political realms. Gnosis is connection to source. So our events are based around those three kind of pillars. Um, and then we also like wanted to do things a bit differently. So we have these transition pathways. And so one of them is decommodifying the land. So nobody owns the land. The land's in a trust. It's a nonprofit, but it's a nonprofit trust. And so, like it's kind of like looking at what the logic of the system is doing, the capitalist system, and like suggesting some post-capitalist thought into it. And so we have 20 partners that have invested into get the center up and running and the land to where future residential would be. And and yeah, and nobody owns it as well. Like the land is in the trust where, you don't own this little plot. Like if you want to do residential, um, there's going to be a plot that you can build on. And then if you want to leave, we buy it back from you essentially,
Hmm.
cost. And we didn't mark things up, over the years. We've just like, yeah, we tried to do things a little differently. Like we had to get some loans from partners. I put in some loans as well, and we did it interest free. Like, because interest is one of those things in the system that makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. In Islam, it's actually haram in some ways, right? It's like not brotherly in some ways,
Hmm.
so we do interest-free debt. We do like resiliency is another pathway where we um, have created a system called Força Amor or Mycelia, where $5 from every night stay goes into a fund and basically an entity, a nonprofit entity that helps the local community, creates resiliency in the local community. It's a residential, no, sorry, it's a mutual aid network. So the mutual aid it does things like, we did the roof for the community center. We have a woman working there full time. She's tuning into the hyper local community of around 500 homes in this little tiny area of San Juan. And yeah, just tuning in. What do they need? Uh, all sorts of stuff. There was a pedophile, for example, in the area, and the family didn't feel safe, so we helped erect a fence. Um, things like that. So we're kind of in tune with what's happening in the hyperlocal. Um, also, like uh, you know, the way we build is using biomimetic, biophilic principles, looking at round shapes, earth shapes, building the bamboo, earth um, domes, all that sort of stuff. So those are
Okay,
some
there's a lot that we're going to unpack.
yeah,
So, but I want to just laser
pathway.
you a little bit.
Yeah,
I do want to shout out your brother a little bit because a lot of his theories are embedded in what you do.
yeah,
Maybe you could just say a little bit about kind of his series of post-capitalist development, I'll call it.
yeah. I mean, he's written a book on it, so I'm not probably about post-capitalist philanthropy. Um, I wouldn't do it justice, but I think what I would say is just like post-capitalism is not anti-capitalism, and like it's not anti anything. It's post. And so when we talk about transition pathways, these are just some of the ideas we came up with to like um, to create a new possibility um, around things, uh, and so yeah, like we're also living in the contradiction, right? Like we run a center where capital needs to come in to like pay our 28 staff, and it's not cheap in Costa Rica, and people are spending time, energy, money on fossil fuels to get here, and so how do we balance, right? Like, yeah, we have a solidarity fund and we do sliding scale and stuff like that, but it's like it's not it's not anti anything,
Right.
we're abundance, but it's more like it doesn't have one owner who makes a lot of money and treats his employees or her employees
Yeah.
poorly. It's like we live in a collective, there's a collective decision making, there's a lens of how do we give back, how do we not be, you know, how do we not gentrify, and they're like
Mm,
a lot
mm.
of those who come and treat Costa Ricans like kind of like slave labor in some ways. And so we treat our employees like family in a lot of ways. And, we have an employee share program and we also just like, it's like, yeah, how do we live with principles and not let
Mm.
people drive us first, but let our principle drive us, you know? So I would just, yeah,
Yeah, we should say that people don't know um, you're in Costa Rica, and there's probably 20 centers. I don't want to say they're same, but the sort of visionary ideas, I'll put them in Costa Rica, that are there. And I guess where I was going with that is that I know that before you established this one,
Yeah,
You traveled and you visited a lot of different places, and I'm
yeah,
wondering what you this is a big question. What did you take away from, or maybe more interestingly, what where did you deviate? What did you see that you wanted to do different that was not happening in some of the places that you visited?
yeah. Well, I think I've talked about some of them. So those transition pathways, right? So there's five, right? Decommodify the land, cultivating resiliency, um, mimicking nature, redistributing some of the resources, protecting the biodiversity. Um, so though, like when I traveled, so I went to India, I saw Oroville, I saw a few other communities, but even in Costa Rica, there's a model here where folks, uh, usually one rich, mostly white person, buys a big swath of land and like puts a gate around it, might do some permaculture stuff within, might make a community center, but then sells plots of land and things go up and they sell their, like regular houses, they sell their land or house when it's done or whatever. And it makes certain people really rich, and the rest of the folks are there to figure out what community is. And that model kind of didn't sit well with us in that way. Um, and then there's like other communities where like it's based around a guru or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also didn't sit well. And in some communities like had a lot of volunteers that I went to where it almost felt like they're just trying to extract like
Yeah,
like volunteer labor as like a thing. Um,
yeah.
so I think um, like decommodifying land and having the partners all own proportionate shares, or I think that's something different, in terms of like making sure like we're putting like the regeneration of the biodiversity and protecting biodiversity like front and center. Um, yeah, building in different ways that are
Mm.
are regenerative and are using bamboo and using like low impact materials like aircrete, which is 20% concrete, 80% dish soap, no nails in the build. Um, yeah, just mimicking nature, doing things like a little different is different than what the others were doing and are doing. And also like, you know, although our event center, the Center for Applied Cultural Transition is built first. Um, it's like we're not just open for anybody to come and rent it. Like we have to be values aligned,
Mm.
around eros, polis, or gnosis. And I think that's a little different as well. And sometimes we allow private groups, but then we won't co-brand. Like we have an internal and an external part of our business. And so if it's internal, there's a lot of um, yeah, there's a lot of care that goes into what we post on our website. That we're co-marketing and co-branding and bringing. Um, yeah, and like we don't actually have like a mission statement. We have a prayer, right? And um, our prayer is like to create. I might get this wrong, but it's really, from what I remember, it's to create an imprint of lived possibility in solidarity with life and in dialogue with the living planet and in service of the collective transition. Something like that is
Mm.
our prayer.
I love the vocabulary that you use around transition.
Yeah,
Because like you're not there, we're not there. Lots of us have great ideas about things, but the fact of the matter is we're living in a capitalist society. We need to make money. All these
yeah,
kind of things are real that we have to hold at the same time that we're moving into a different space.
yeah,
And I really admire that that's front and center in how you're thinking about things and how you're doing things.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Now, you've seen a lot of people. A lot of people come through there. They come through all these similar places. What is your sense as to what people are looking for? Why is there this kind of desire to live differently? I know it's a broad question, but
um, I don't
the
know.
simplest answer is that what's going on is not working.
I don't know. We're 16, 20, 26. the Death Star, or US Israel, as I is literally bombing Iran for no apparent reason other than, they don't have a central bank and they've nationalized oil many years ago. Um, uh, we have the abduction of Maduro from Venezuela. Again, they nationalized oil a few years ago and they didn't have a central bank. And like Cuba, they're starving Cuba. Like there's a basically an embargo blockade around getting oil into Cuba. Again, they nationalized things 50 years ago. It's almost like all these projects that were, um, and I'm not even thinking anti-American, they weren't anti-Indian, they were just pro themselves.
Anti-life.
Yeah, they're like Cuba was just pro people. And from my perspective of why they broke away. And, even Venezuela with Chavez, or, the revolution in Iran, like they nationalized these things for a reason. And corporate America and the industrial military complex is a bit insane from my perspective. And and so the empire, and I think empire's dying. I think this, like even World War II, the British Empire was dying, and so this to me is like this is what happens when empires die.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of people, it's like, why, for me anyway, I can only speak for myself really, but like when I started drinking plant medicine and doing the meditation work, it's like, what am I creating? What am I a part of? Like I'm
Mm.
sitting in this high rise, um, trading stocks and running mutual funds so that rich people can get richer. And what am I what my it wasn't linked to my soul wanted to do.
Mm.
It was, my ego was really in control. And as I started to get like my ego falling in love with my soul's purpose, then a lot of things started to shift, right? And so the world's crazy and it's been crazy for a long time. We're seeing it more now. Like
Mm.
it's funny, people like who knew what we were doing 10 years ago thought I was a little bit like off my rocker, especially like my uncles and stuff. They're like, you're gonna leave a really good job. What are you doing? You crazy. And now they're like, one of my uncles calls me Guru. He's like, Guru, you
It's hilarious.
like, but especially after COVID, supply chains and like what, we're growing some food here. And like I think the need for smallholder farms and de uh more yeah, decentralization
Mm.
is basically more important now than ever. Like the more growing your own food is a radical act, right? We have compost toilets here. Like to know where your poop goes and to actually use that for your farm is a radical act. And there's just so many things that we take for granted and
Mm.
comfort in the system that you know that won't necessarily help us as um, you know, the industrial military complex expands. And we think it's only out there in the Middle East, but you're seeing it come home with ICE and like
Mm.
craziness and um, Palantir, the militarization, the watching of the population, the surveillance state. And so I think people are just waking up and being like, yo, if I'm a cog in this wheel or I'm doing something different. And
Mm.
that's where community becomes exciting, doing something different becomes exciting.
Mm.
I also think there's a lot of challenge with community and it's a spiritual process and it's not easy. Um, um,
Yeah, let's talk about the not easy part. So you describe yourself drinking a lot, living in high rise and all that. And in a way, you're an exemplar of what we're talking about in terms of a transformation. How would you describe your inner transformation from the person, the Ollie that you were then, and the Ollie Khan you are now?
yeah, I mean, at the ultimate essence, similar, you know. It's more me. Like there was more, there was me, young me, and then there was adolescent me, and like, you know, the me that thought I needed to be something. And then as I've gone on the spiritual journey, it's realizing, wow, I just need to actually be just like be here, be present,
Mm,
um, and trust. I think there was a lot of distrust with the universe. Like, yeah, I needed security. I needed to know I was going to make a lot of money. I needed to like
mm.
certainty. A lot of fear-based decisions versus now there's more a lot of trust-based, like heart-based, like tuning in, somatic-based decision making. Um, I can go into more detail about that, but yeah, I think it's really just trusting what my purpose is and why I'm
Mm.
here. And um, I do a lot here, and there's often a lot of distortion and projection, and I'm realizing like that as a leader, I have to be with more. Like I have a tendency to something we call, and I also teach authentic relating, and I'm steeped in that and form part-based communication, but we call it jade. Like this is this desire to like justify or um, defend or explain.
Yeah, you use that word, and I just let it go. I didn't know what you meant by jade, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
jade, like this desire to jade, And so for me as a leader, I'm realizing, oh, like just noticing that desire and then being with, and it's not all about, yeah, like sometimes I'm in so many things I want to like not be seen
Mm.
in the wrong way, but I'm learning how to be more relational. And that I didn't learn that in investment banking or in MBA or as like how do I be with people's emotion and um, as somebody who is a leader, in this small context, but like how do I show up, And I'm not perfect. I hadn't always shown up at all in the way I want to show up, but yeah, it's like I think a leader also grows in public, and I'm feeling that, and seeing that and um, being able to slow down more and um, yeah, feel myself more and um, yeah, just really listen more. And I still have work to do in these realms. Um,
Well, I'm a little older than you, I think, and I grew up where the counterculture was big, right? And you're you're a little younger than me, but still, where I was getting to is a lot of people have romantic notions about spiritual communities, collaborative spaces, whatever word we want to use. What are some misconceptions that people have, and how to what's the reality as opposed to the illusion of what it looks like?
that's a good question. I can't speak for everyone, but I know when we started as well, there was like an idealization of community in some way, and there was a definition of community that was a certain way. And after 10 years of doing this, like I see my community not as like necessarily the external partners who are here once in a while, but really the 28 employees who are here day to day, and like cooking staff, the cleaning staff, management, and like I see them as really the community of Brave Earth because the residential side hasn't fully formed yet, and people aren't here all year. There's a handful of us who are here, and I really just value my community, and it's really a lot of the local Costa Ricans that are here in the day to day. And so my what is community shifted, and also like the amount of um, heart space it takes to be in community, like when there's conflict, how do we listen to the other? How do we be with? How do we own our own stuff? I don't think we as an entity have done that very well. Brave Earth, I would say, is like um, it hasn't like cracked that code. And I think that's part of the reason the residential side hasn't fully formed. It's like from my perspective anyways, there's just like something around um, conflict and projection and distortion and being with it all and healing it and like growing together. and it's a hard thing to crack, you know. Um, I look at a community like Tamara in Portugal. They do these things called forum, and they're processing all the time with new people, old people, uh, and we don't have that level of processing. We had somebody from Tamara come and was well like, you guys aren't actually community. Um, you're like coworkers with a shared vision, And I'm like, first I was like, huh. And then I'm like,
Ouch.
actually, it makes a lot of sense. I think there's another level of communication and of processing and of heart resonance that needs to happen with community, um, and there's different layers of it. Um, so yeah, I think it's idealized and underestimated how much work it takes to really, it's like being in a relationship. It's like getting, starting community and a business. It's like really like starting a business and getting married at the same time. And maybe you're with the right partners, or maybe you're not. Maybe we have shared values at one point, and then things shift, and it's like, and then not only is your home and your work and your finances all tied together, and if it's not going well, um, it feels heightened. Like when there's
Yeah.
conflict, more existential for me, anyways. It can feel that way. Um, and so there's just a lot,
Yeah.
and like resentment, like who's doing stuff, who's not, who's here, who's not. Like there's so many layers that
Mm.
factor in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One of the things that you're about, which I want to spotlight, and I need to read a little bit because I don't know much about that, but it's really about your interrelationship with some of the other people, the other communities, the indigenous population that's near you in Costa Rica, which I think is very important, and I just want to hear you talk about it. You talked about there's something called Frieza del Amor, for example, and there's I don't know what that is, but you're also in contact with your neighbors. You're living in an ecosystem in which there are indigenous people that have less money than you are. You're having to deal with all that. So say a little bit about that and how you deal with it.
yeah. So
It would be
yeah,
easy for you to create to some extent like this walled community where people from the West come in, they pay a lot of money to do workshops or whatever, but you've made a deliberate attempt
yeah,
to integrate yourself to a certain degree with the people that are around you. So talk about that.
yeah. We're settler immigrants to Costa Rica. We're not
Yeah.
settler colonizers because we didn't use for it. We're settler immigrants, and a lot of settler immigrants in Costa Rica, uh, like if you go to places like Nosara or Santa Teresa, from my perspective, it's Westerners that have a lot of money that want to build these mansions next to the beach, and Costa Ricans are seen as labor, cheap labor.
Mm.
We didn't want to do that. We wanted to be good neighbors. And so 5% or $5 from every night stay goes into like basically this program. This program gets funded by other sources as well, like donations and things like that. It was called Fuerza de Amor, love enforcement, but we've rebranded to Mycelia, which is like the network of mycelium mushroom, tentacles. So it's called Mycelia now. And so Mycelia is run by this woman named Pau and a few others. And it's really about tuning into the local community. Like we're in Costa Rica and we're on the like Caribbean slope and we're near a town called La Fortuna. And then we're in this town called San Isidro de Piedras Blancas. And then there's a town within the town called San Juan. And
Mhm.
we're focused on San Juan. And it's got a little soccer field, it's got a church, it's got about 500 little homes in this mountain. And, you know, are they indigenous? They're not like indigenous how we may think of indigenous. Like a lot of them have Spanish descent. They might have intermarried with indigenous at some point, but they're mostly third, fourth, fifth generation here. There is a very small indigenous population in our area called the Maleku. There's about 6 or 7 tribes in Costa Rica. They've been decimated by colonization, um, the the wars that U.S. corporations did around food companies in the past. Um, they've been decimated. We do also work with some of the Meleku about an hour and a half away in try to sell some of their goods and bring people there and create a relationship with them. But we're really embedded in this San Juan community. And so when they have a need, we try to respond, either do a minga, which is permaculture term for like getting bodies involved and volunteering our time. It started off where we were noticing even some of our employees had really poor living conditions. So we would donate some of the materials and we get the workers on the day off to like build somebody a washroom that was, in their home that didn't have one. Proper sanitary. Like some people are really poor in these areas, um, and so it's really coming out of that impulse of like, how do we be good neighbors? How do we tune? How do we listen? How do we not just be um like these,
Yeah.
drinkers that come here and extract, like, and so that's where the impulse comes from. And then how do we replicate that? One of part of our ethos is like, okay,
Mm.
mycelia, part of our network, part of our, thought process is how do we replicate mycelias around Costa Rica and even community model. How do we replicate some of what we're doing in other spaces and the stuff that we had figured out, anyways.
So I imagine a lot of people that are coming to your event that you're going to facilitate for us, which I should know the exact date, but it's in April, and I'll put put that in the show notes. What do you hope people to take away from this, Ollie Ollie Khan?
Uh, I don't think I'm going to be speaking in much more level of detail than we've just spoken about now. So, what did you take away from this so far, Angelo?
Turn it back on me. Well, I, like a lot of people, I feel like there's a tremendous hunger for, trying to be real and authentic in this world that's I see changing all around me. And anything that I can do, conversations like this help me get there. I don't expect that you're going to give me all the answers, and I don't expect that you're going to give our audience a lot of all the answers. But hopefully, we can push each other so that we create a community of people that are looking for the answers, asking the right questions, so that maybe our children are in a better place. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, even why I said yes to this is also like, yeah, maybe to inspire or to like, also not idealize. I think community is very challenging. I'm also doing community with my brother, and it's like, there's old stuff that comes up, and um, it's work,
Yeah.
and and I'm here for it. And I don't and I think my constitution is here for it. And I don't know if everybody's here for it. And I think that's really important. It's like, is it for you? Um, and that's a
Yeah, the way I look at it is that we're in a big transition right now. So how can we navigate it? But even more importantly, how can we help each other navigate it?
yeah,
Because we can't do it by ourselves.
yeah, absolutely.
I can't change global warming by myself. I can't
Yeah.
get rid of Trump by myself, but hopefully I can do a little bit to add something, and it's part of a collective movement.
Yeah. Yeah, my charge, I need a charger. It's got my charger here. Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, I think there's so many layers to all of this, right? And
Yeah.
and like we could go in depth about the indigenous in Costa Rica and what they need. And there's so many different needs and um and then what like the local communities need and the gentrification and there's just like so many layers. But if we don't even like ask those questions, like I know a lot of folks are in the US or in Canada, they're like, these places are messed up. Where do we go? And like, we chose to come here, but there's so many layers. Like we're now imposing ourselves on a different peoples, and
Yeah.
they're understanding their problems. And like Costa Rica is amazing, it has no army and all these things, but then they're also really slaves to the US in a lot of ways. And We have a right-wing government that just came through. Like the healthcare is not that good, and as we age, so there's all these things of um under layers of understanding. And it's like, well, what is community? Can I have community where I live? How do I resist um the capitalist machine, the Death Star, like from within or from wherever
Yeah.
you are, And like what is community, right? Does the guy who lives in New York for 10 generations, who knows everybody in his block, if you tell him that's not community, like he'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. And well, they're kids, And it's like it's there's layers. And um I think it's really the healing together in some way. and
Mm.
and also like understanding that we live in a planet that where humans are committing ecocide, genocide, there's patriarchy, there's white supremacy, and not to like shut people down around any of that, but to just be like, that's kind of what's happening out here. And so what do we do? You
Mm.
know, like there's a system that incarcerates mostly black
Yeah.
men in the
Yeah.
US. And it's kind of like slavery never left, for some, as I
Yeah.
tune into like some stories around it. And it's just like, wow, like we're supposed to be in these, you know, places of like the top
Yeah.
freedoms. And it's like, that's not true for everyone. And so I think there's so many things people can do to resist and be in community. And they don't necessarily need to move to Costa Rica to do
Yeah,
that.
it's not necessarily about Costa Rica or Lambertville, New Jersey, which is where I live. It's like we've got to do all this together, wherever we are.
Absolutely. And yeah. And how do we, I don't like the word fight, but how do we bring awareness to the system and like, stick together
Yeah.
and uh, and also be in our joy. I think that's like,
Ah, yes.
I think it's like we get a lot of activists that I see get so caught up in the thing. And it's like, how do we also have fun? How else we create that energy of like play and not taking it too seriously at the same time. It's like um there's a Ram Dass quote that's like the universe is perfect and so is my desire to change it. You know,
Mm,
so
beautiful.
there's like, yeah, the desire's there and it's perfect. And how do we also enjoy the ride and
Yeah.
not take it?
Yeah,
No,
that's a wonderful note to end on it. Yeah, the joy's got to be there. You know,
no,
if you'll kill yourself fighting it.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Ollie, I just cannot wait until I can't not only wait to you conducting our exploration, but also the aftermath, which I'm hopefully is going we're going to inspire some people.
Okay, great. Well, are you going to use this for something, or are we just
Yeah,
listening?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll probably chop it up, make lots of little, edits of you or something like that, and bring people into the party.
All right. I see. Yeah, cool. And yeah, it'll probably just be more of the same. So yeah,
Well, you'll be a little bit more practice, so I'm sure it'll be better.
yeah, cool. All right,
Hey man, it's a pleasure and it's an honor, and I'm looking forward to it.
all right, brother. Great. Nice talking to you.